Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible, and those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is the Full Ratchet.
Welcome to another special release of Investor Stories. On this installment, the experts discuss a startup that they did not invest in, why they passed, and if there was a key learning that now informs their approach. Here is the segment called Why I Passed. On today's special segment, we have Vic Pascucci of Lightbank. Vic, can you tell us a story about a startup you passed on, why you passed, and how the situation played out?
So, I'm the guy. I passed on Uber at $5 billion because I'm like, no way this thing's going to be that big of a company. And so time will tell. And part of that decision I made was on the team. So We'll see what happens there. But I know some good friends of mine that passed on 30 when it was 30 on 300 as well. So, time will see, how does that really print for the people that have their money in. So, I still hope the best for them and the team and what's happening there. So that's definitely one I passed. But it was also, not necessarily a space. Well, I've done a lot in auto and on the convergence of finance and insurance around auto. This is probably a space I shouldn't have been looking at anyways.
On today's special segment, we have Ben Einstein of Bolt. Ben, can you tell us a story about a startup that you passed on, why you passed, and how the situation played out?
Sure, we do a lot of passing. Unfortunately, I really wish we could do less passing, but it turns out the venture business is really wrapped around that.
We're all quarterbacks, right?
It's true. Man, yeah, I got to think of I don't know if I have a really good story about a particular thing. There are definitely many companies that we have passed on, which maybe we shouldn't have, and I think those are I think really sort of important stories to tell and learn from. I'd probably say that one of the bigger regrets we've had is a company called Canary that some of you may be familiar with, based in New York.
Charlie O'Donnell was talking about Canary on the program.
Yeah, and we actually met them before Bolt actually closed our first fund, which is actually the reason that we passed, which is maybe silly. Yeah, but this is what happens, right? Timing is a big part of the venture business. And we actually had those guys talk at the very first meetup we ran in Boston. And I remember they came up from New York, and I was really excited to meet them. And the idea always seemed really interesting to me. But for a whole variety of reasons, mostly due to timing and the fact that we were pretty new, we decided not to go for it. And I think I own one and think it's a fantastic product, and the guys have executed really well. And Charlie's a good friend, says great things about them. So definitely wish that we didn't pass on that one. But as I hear from my two partners who are far more experienced in the venture world than I am, this is a thing that you can never really get away from. And even the best investors in the world have their stories of the companies they pass on that they really shouldn't have.
On today's special segment, we have Ethan Kurzweil of Bessemer Venture Partners. Ethan, can you talk about reasons you commonly pass on an investment and or mention a pass that you made that you now regret?
Yeah, I think the developer commandments tend to be, the reason sometimes I'll miss something, and so or not. But it tends to be something where I see a service that doesn't really replace something that the enterprise is already paying for. Commandment number 3. It's sort of a nice to have for developers. Some developers like it, but it's not really a big ticket area of enterprise spend, and so we'll pass for that reason. Or the user experience isn't great, or very commonly there isn't a way to charge more as the service gets bigger. It's kind of a flat fee-like model, or you're charging per developer, like per seat, kind of like you might a SaaS company. Those businesses don't tend to be as good, and so that tends to be a common reason to pass, particularly in this world. Sometimes we get that wrong. We'll think something isn't monetizable in that way, and it turns out there is a way to charge more as as more usage ends up happening.
Any passes that you now regret?
Well, two companies I wish I had invested in are Stripe and GitHub. GitHub has this tremendous strong network effect that is obvious, right?
Yeah.
And then, Stripe replaces something that no one enjoys doing. No one enjoys setting up a merchant account with a bank and getting the kinds of verification steps that are required to be able to accept payments on the internet. It was really cumbersome before Stripe. And then Stripe and their Braintree and others made that really, really easy. So those are probably the two that are on my wish list that are not in the best of my portfolio, regrettably.
On today's special segment, we have David Verrill of the Hub Angels Investment Group. David, can you tell us a story about a startup you passed on and why it was that you passed?
Sure. There are about 1,000 of these stories because we're only investing about 1% of the companies that we see. But one person that I met last week was sort of indicative of a type of entrepreneur that we tend to stay away from. So I met a gentleman who's starting a company in the financial services space, and Boston is a big ecosystem for financial services, and I've got a large percentage of my membership comes from that space. So we love fintech, and we've been looking at a lot of companies in the space. This particular gentleman was really quite accomplished. In fact, I would call him, one of the brilliant minds in the space. But along the way, it became very clear to me that he wanted to do this his way, that he had to be the CEO throughout the life of the company, even though he had no experience in starting any type of organization before. He had overthought things that don't matter. Like, for example, he wanted to start this as an LLC, and then, 7.3 months from now, convert that to a C Corp when he would need $1.37 million. I mean, just had really overthought the process,
Wow.
Just obviously a smart person. And love the fact that he was a luminary in the space. But when it's clear that you're not going to be able to work with somebody, that they're not going to take your advice, that they're not interested in having a balanced board, you just turn and walk away every time, regardless of how excited you get about the entrepreneur or the space.
Is that often why you end up passing some sort of personality trait or approach by the entrepreneur that makes you sort of question the long-term viability of them as a leader?
I'd say it's on the top 5 list. People are the most important. People in any startup company make it a success. And if from the outset you just don't feel like you've got alignment with the founder, then you got to take a pass every time. So we did on that one, and those that we feel we just can't work with somebody. We're active investors, and we've been doing this for a long time, and we may not be the best at it on the planet Earth, but we've got a measure of experience and a measure of success based upon that experience that suggests that we kind of know what the parameters are, and that's one where we just won't diverge from a team that just won't work with us.
That will conclude this installment of Investor Stories. If you're enjoying the program and would like to see it continue, take a moment and leave a 5-star review in iTunes. Also, if you'd like updates on new content from TFR, as well as the top 10 VC articles every week, go to fullratchet.net and sign up for the newsletter. Okay, that will wrap things up for today. Until next time, over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for joining me.